All right, well, welcome everyone to this Process Mining Academy session. It's next month will be our 20th Academy session. It's kind of hard to believe, but it's really been fun to be a part of and to watch how the ServiceNow community has taken to our in-platform process mining solution. These sessions have been viewed by thousands at this point, and the hours that have been consumed. It's great. It's always nice when I show up somewhere and they say, Dan, I've watched some of your videos, and I have to apologize for them hearing my voice. Today's session is going to be focused on process mining for external data, which is available as of the Vancouver release. I think almost every conversation I have with the customer about process mining, after they see the power and the visibility it provides to workflows they have running on the ServiceNow platform, the second question they ask after, of course, like when can I get my hands on this, is can it also apply this to processes that are running outside of the ServiceNow? And now the answer to that question is yes, and we'll cover how you can do that today. But before we get to the main course, let's quickly get our logistics out of the way. The purpose of these sessions are to help us all get better educated on ServiceNow's process mining capabilities. We'll provide how-tos, practical guidance and use cases, product updates, and as a group, just exchange ideas and collaborate so we all continue to get better. How these sessions work for the first timers is we have a scheduled topic that we usually cover for the first 30 minutes. Today is definitely going to run a little bit longer because we'll be doing a bit of a deeper dive. Then we open it up for questions on the chosen topic for that session. We open it up for questions above and beyond the day's topic, sort of an office hours type environment. And these sessions are going to be recorded and posted on the community. So if you've got others that you think might be interested in viewing the content, you can always point them at the community. Finally, feel free to post your questions in the QA section. We'll do our best to answer as many as we possibly can in the session, but for those situations where we don't have an answer for your question immediately, we'll follow up and post them to the community site, or maybe use them as a topic for a future session. Now, specifically for today's session, one thing I'd like to ask is, as we go through the content, if you have some thoughts or ideas on what type of processes you'd be interested in applying this process mining capabilities to beyond ServiceNow. We're super interested in learning the areas that customers are most interested in. So if you want to put those in the Q&A, or if you happen to be watching the recording on the community, just please post those in the comment section. Now, this is the slide that says, hey, anything I say and do here today can't be held against me in the court of law. But it is also the slide that says, hey, as part of this conversation, if we happen to make any forward-looking statements about things that are potentially coming as part of the ServiceNow platform, you should take those as forward-looking statements, recognize that they're always subject to change, and make no purchasing decisions based on them whatsoever. I'm assuming you've all read the fine print. For those that I've not met before, my name is Dan Grady. I'm part of the product team here at ServiceNow that's working on our process mining solution. So I know I've worked with many of you in the past, but for those that are new, that's me. Now, what we'll do today is we'll do our quick little process mining 101 for the newcomers, and then we'll jump into the topic, right? Process mining for external data. We'll talk a little bit about how it works. We'll talk about event data and what that is and the different pieces of it. That's probably the crux of the presentation here today, what you need to understand. We'll walk you through the import process so you understand what goes into bringing the data into the ServiceNow platform. We'll touch briefly on automated findings, which is a newer capability in the Vancouver release that's super helpful when we start looking at external data projects that we're creating. We'll do a deeper dive on this in next month's session. And then we'll jump over to a demo, and the demo will be broken into a couple of pieces. We'll look at just what a finished project might look like, and then we'll go through the process of loading up some data and creating a project. We'll touch on the plugin information, get your questions answered, talk about some additional resources beyond today, and then we'll get you out of here. All right, as always, the quick process mining 101 for the newcomers. With everything we do, there's a design and desired path in our minds for how it should work and how things should play out, whether that be planning an event like these Academy sessions or a business process. And when you design things, you design for both efficiency as well as completeness to provide the best experience possible for as many people as possible. Unfortunately, what we design isn't always what ends up happening in reality. The reality is that not all work flowing through a given process is going to take the optimal path, and that's going to have a negative impact on the experience that both employees or customers requesting a service are having, as well as the people that are trying to deliver that service. Now, identifying what is actually happening within our workflows and then improving them isn't always that easy. What process mining allows us to do is use audit log data that is generated by records moving through a given workflow to create a visual representation of what is actually happening within a given process. And this new level of visibility helps us accelerate our ability to identify inefficiencies, non-conformant process activities, and just in general improvement opportunities, ways to get better. Process mining gives us the ability to answer process questions that have historically been very challenging for people to answer. So where traditional analytics will allow us to answer a lot of the what questions about our processes, process mining helps us answer the whys. So things like, where is the process getting stuck? Where is unnecessary rework happening? Where is work ping-ponging between different teams or groups? Or where aren't we conforming to the process that we've designed? All these things have a negative impact on the experience that people have. They have a drain from a productivity perspective on the organization, and they've historically been difficult to answer and act upon. And now in a couple of clicks, we can. We at ServiceNow like to say that process mining is going to get you to the why behind all of your process KPIs. And in doing so, empower everyone involved in the process to make data-driven decisions about which improvements to make. And from a ServiceNow perspective, we can apply process mining to single table, like this incident example here, or multi-table processes, like, for example, a request that has both items and tasks with approvals and bottlenecks within the work at the task level. There's lots of opportunities within the request processes that our customers have. The multi-dimensional approach is also powerful for things like HR lifecycle events, where you have a high-level onboarding case and then a bunch of subtasks and requests involved in the process. And now we can apply process mining to process data imported into the platform from external applications, like this example of a hiring process driven by data that's been pulled from smart recruiters, or maybe this procure to pay process, which has been assembled from data from, let's say, maybe SAP or something like that. This ability to apply process mining to external data, that's the focus for our session today. So let's start with how it works and the key components and the things you need to be aware of, and then we'll jump into the instance and step through the process together. As we mentioned earlier, process mining is powered by event log data. Right? That is where we are analyzing, that's what we're analyzing as part of this, and it's what we're visualizing in the map. Now, when we're talking about ServiceNow native workflows, that event log data is readily available via the audit logs. That's what allows us to provide such a streamlined experience, and it's one of the reasons why it makes so much sense to always use ServiceNow process mining for in-platform workloads. What we're now offering with ServiceNow for external data is the ability to import event log data extracted from applications that are executing processes outside of ServiceNow. So how it works is you'll create an extract file, typically in the CSV or Excel format from those external applications. We're going to be using Integration Hub to do the import. So if you're handy with spokes and actions, you can connect directly to a third-party application and import using those capabilities. You'll be guided through a step-by-step process to get the data loaded up and then transformed into the structure our native ServiceNow process mining is expecting. And then you'll create your project, mine, and start analyzing your data in minutes, just as you've been doing for processes like incident, request, or HR case. For those of you that are new to process mining or have only used ServiceNow process mining to date and haven't had to deal with event data before, you might be asking yourself, like, what does an event log file data look like? This is an important piece because this is what you'll need to be able to produce from whatever external system you want to apply process mining to. There's 3 core pieces of information necessary for process mining. A case ID or some sort of unique identifier for a record. It could be a claim number, a patient or employee ID, or just simply a case ID. So you need that unique identifier. You need an activity. Essentially, this is the thing that is changing over time that we want to track. Usually this is some sort of status or state value. But as we often do for native ServiceNow workflows, perhaps you might want to look at how things are moving between teams or groups. And then the last core value that we need is a timestamp, like for when the activity value has changed. If you can produce these three pieces of information from an external system, we can visualize your process and highlight bottlenecks and inefficiency with process mining. Now, in addition to those core data points, you may want to augment the data with some contextual information that we'll be able to use as part of our analysis, things like categories, regions, types, etc. For those that are familiar with our process mining solution, these will be values we'll use as breakdowns in the workspace. Now, once you have a file that looks like this, the rest of the process is pretty much a piece of cake. We'll do that in the demo portion here today. Are there other ways to format the data to include multiple activity values? Yes, but I think we're going to save that for another session. So now with our process event data in hand, you or somebody with the process mining admin role will go to the process mining workspace to step through the process of loading up the data. You'll give your external data set a name. Then you'll be given instructions on which fields we're creating for you by default and why. Essentially, what we just walked through, right? Those core three fields and those additional contextual fields, that's what it's telling you there. Then you'll have the option to add those additional fields for contextual data like locations, types, categories, and stuff. Once you've configured the import table, you'll be directed to Integration Hub to handle the mapping and importing of your data into the import table that you just created. And then once that data is loaded into the import table, the guided setup completes the process, formatting the data on the platform so you can mine it like any other process running on the platform. Now, the import process is handled by someone with a process mining admin role. That may not always be the same person who's actually creating the project or doing the analysis. So you have the option now, once that data set is created, to share it with the appropriate individuals. And when you get to this screen, only people with process mining roles will be available to share the data set with. So if you aren't seeing someone you want to share the data set with, it's likely they don't have the appropriate role. And we're talking about process mining developers, analysts, and viewers. All right, last thing, I think the last thing before we get into the instance, right? So at this point now, you're just creating a project, right? Just like you would if the process was running on ServiceNow. One little thing that you need to be aware of when you start creating projects against external data sets is you need to change the source type to external data. This one is kind of a couple of times when I've went through the process, I'm like, where's the data set I just created? And that's because I hadn't chosen the source type of external data, so I made it. But it was important to call that out for folks. Now, the other thing that I wanted to point out is, unlike our in-platform workflows, we don't have content packs with pre-built finding definitions for common inefficiencies and non-conformant process behaviors. But as of the Vancouver release, you can now start to take advantage of the automated finding capabilities. And these help surface common inefficient process patterns like rework, ping-ponging tickets, or process variants with additional steps. You can configure these in a couple of clicks at the process configuration level, and then they'll surface opportunities the first time you mine the data. We'll have a whole separate Academy session on these next month, but I wanted to touch on them today because I think they're super useful for external data mining projects. So I wanted to just at least introduce the concept today, show you where you do to configure these things, just in case it's the only Academy session that you've watched. All right, let's jump into the instance and run through some things. And like I said, we're going to just start. Oh, let me log in. We'll start with a finished project, and then we'll walk through how we got there. So let's come in here. I'll log into my instance. And I'm going to open up this hiring process analysis project. So in this case, we're looking at some hiring data that was pulled from, let's say, Smart Recruiters. And on our Summary and Insights page, we're highlighting some KPIs associated with the hiring process, things that would be impacted as we continue to refine and remove inefficiencies and waste from the process. And then with the addition of automated findings in the Vancouver release, we can produce a number of different opportunities, number of different findings, right? The number could be really high. So we've reworked the summary and insights page a little bit to help categorize these findings by type and allow you to link them to key performance indicators to help guide you to opportunities that might have the biggest impact. And if we will start to come down here and look at the opportunities themselves, you'll see that there's some that are focused on rework in the process. There's some that are focused on things ping-ponging back and forth. And then there's some that are focused on extra steps. I'm gonna dig into this extra step one here, where it's telling us that there's an additional step between the interview and offer approved process step of the process, this offer pending step. And there's 259 cases in which this occurred. It impacts our average time to hire, and the average duration of this additional step is about 3 days. So let's just jump into those and look at kind of where that additional step is and kind of dig into the impact. And this is going to be just like you're using native ServiceNow data, right? Just like data or processes you'd be looking at on the platform. So most of you are familiar with kind of how you would navigate through some of this, but for those that aren't, just show you a couple of things. One, I'll expand it out and I can see here's the path where I've got created, sourcing, interview to approved. That's the first variant of it. And then here's the route where we start adding those additional steps, the 259 that go into that offer pending. And I can see here they're adding the 3 where the 3 days gets added to the process. Then I can do things just like you would with native data. Maybe I don't care about this big bucket in which it's less than those 3 days. Maybe I only care about the outliers, the hiring cases or recs that are taking longer than those 3 days when they go into that offer pending state to see and look at those outliers. So I can narrow it down to just those. Then I can start using my breakdowns to look at them by department, country, job category. And it looks like maybe let's just come in here and look at the department. Sales looks to be the most, so let's apply this. Look at those that came in via sales. Maybe I want to come down to the country level. It looks like the majority of those are in the US, but these India ones have a whole extra month packaged up into them. So maybe I want to look at those, narrow it down, and keep going through the process, just like you've done with native stuff on the platform. Let's just go pick that up, view those. Now I've narrowed it down to the 12 in India, and then maybe I want to come in here and get all the way down to the records, right? Again, benefit to kind of using the platform is you can navigate through the data, get all the way down to the lowest level, start looking at the data itself. And then you can start using in-platform capabilities once you're at the list level. Most of you are familiar with that, but just wanted to show you that all the bells and whistles that you're used to with process mining natively still available to you if it's an external data set. Now, the next question is, okay, like, how do we do this? How do we get here? So let's walk through that process. What's new is once you've activated the process mining for external data plugin, if you have that admin role, you're going to have this external data sets option over here. And we can come in and we can create a data set. We'll give our data set a name. We'll call it Process Mining Academy Hiring, maybe. We'll hit create. Here's that detailed information about all the relevant pieces of information that you would need from an event log perspective. We'll hit next. And then we get to add those contextual fields. So let's come in here and we'll start adding things like country, departments, and let's say job levels in that data set that we're going to use. And we'll hit next. Cool. Here's the table it's going to create, or the import table it's going to create for me. And I'm going to hit create import table. For those that are familiar with ServiceNow, this is doing exactly what it says. It creates an import table. And I'm going to come in here. I'm just going to grab my table name because we're going to need that a little bit later. Actually, I could have grabbed it from the copy as well. Hit this, and then we'll jump over to Integration Hub. Yes, I'd like to proceed to Integration Hub to load up the data into that set. So we'll come here, we'll create a new integration. We'll call this PM Academy Hiring. Give it a short description, PM Academy Hiring. Hit save and continue. Take a minute to load up. While that's loading up, I'll just look at the questions. Perfect. Got some questions coming in. I just took a Google update before we did this, so things are taking a little bit longer to load in my browser than they have in the past. There we go. So we'll choose our source type. We're going to be using an Excel file here, but if you had spokes and you're handy with Integration Hub, you can use those spokes, create some actions, load the data up a different way if you're interested, or you've got the skills. Like I said, we're just simply going to use an Excel file here. I've got my PM Academy hiring. We'll hit open. It'll interrogate that, load it on up here. And there's the fields that are in that spreadsheet that we're loading. I'm just going to make sure I set the header row to that, and we'll hit save. And then we'll start mapping it to the target. And what you'll see is there a little bit of an auto mapping capability here. So we'll say add table. I'm going to paste my table name. It's going to find the one that we just created. We'll hit save. I'll open this up. We'll do our auto map. You'll notice I've got the fields on the left-hand side that came from my spreadsheet. Here's the table that I want to load them into. And I'll just go through the process saying, okay, what do I want to do? Well, I want to come in here. It automatically mapped my country, department, and job level for me. I want to add my event time as my timestamp field. I'm going to come in here and I'm going to get my unique identifier, map that to the case ID field. And then what I need is my activity values, and I'm going to put those in the event value. You'll see this event type field. This is for those situations where you might have a file that's got multiple types of activities, and you have a field that designates which one it is. This is where you would use that field. We're just going to hit save. And once that saves, we come here to schedule our imports. And we'll just say run import. You can schedule these imports to happen on a periodic basis if you want to. We didn't cover it in the slides or anything, but you can drop data sets, clean it, put fresh data in. I'm just going to open this up. See the execution. It's already completed. So we've loaded up the data that we want to mine. And at this point, what we do is that the data is loaded up. We come back here and ask, hey, let me know when your data import is complete. Yep, it's complete. We'll say next. I'm just going to copy this table name again, just in case I need it. And we're going to confirm and continue. Load it on up, create the record. So we've loaded up the audit data. Now we're going to create the record or case data on the platform to align to those audit files. And that's the table that we're going to wind up pointing at when we go to create our project. So here we go. We've got our PM Academy hiring cases. There's 43 of them in total. There was 385 audit records. Obviously, in real life, your data sets are going to be a little bit larger to use that. Now, at this point, we could go create our project. Before we do that, before we do that, I did want to show you now, let's go create one of those automated findings to apply to this data set. So when we mine it, it'll immediately start showing us some insights inside of the data. So where you configure those is you go here to the process configuration area. So process configurations. And we'll create a new one for the table that we just created. We'll pick our table. And there's the table we just created. We'll pick our dashboard that we want to align to this. I've got my hiring dashboard. And then I can right click and I'll save this record. For this table that we just uploaded, this is where we'd also configure our automated root cause analysis, our automation discovery and cluster analysis fields. We're not going to do that today. What we are going to do is configure an automated finding definition. So we'll come in here, we'll say new. And we'll just say that this is going to be a rework. We'll just say stage rework. And what this is going to be is a rework automated finding. The category is, we'll just categorize it as performance, because if we're doing any sort of rework, it's going to slow us down and impact our performance. And which field do we want to apply this rework analysis to? We'll do it on an activity field. Just so you know, rework analysis, what it's looking for is things that go from a state A, B, C, and then maybe back to A or a previous step in the process. So it's looking for any time something moves through a certain set of steps, then goes back to a previous step. We'll add some or link it to some KPIs. So this is going to impact our average time to hire. Average time to hire. It will also impact our candidate NPS score, probably, if we're slowing things down and doing a lot of rework. So we'll link those KPIs to it. We'll hit submit. And now when we go to create our project, we'll import this, and then we'll run our mining, and it'll automatically identify opportunities and where there's rework happening from an activity perspective. Cool. Let's go over to our workspace and create our project. So we're going to come here. Oops. And we'll create a new project. And this is going to be just like you're creating projects today against in-platform data, now that the data has been imported into the ServiceNow platform. So we'll call this PM Academy hiring data or hiring analysis. I don't need to add a dashboard because we've already added the dashboard at the process configuration level. We'll say save, and we'll pick our table. Say hiring, PM hiring data, the name. Now this is the tricky spot. It's not going to be underneath table. It's going to be underneath our external data sources, right? So you choose external data as your source type. Now we'll have our list of available data sets. Here's the PM Academy hiring that we just created. Just like everything else, if I wanted to start narrowing down the data or scoping the data that we're going to mine, I can use this condition builder, just like you're building a report on the ServiceNow platform. For this situation, we don't need to do that. I'm going to set up my activity definition, which is going to be the stages that things are moving through. So I'm going to come here. I'm going to say, okay, get my activity. We'll just call it hiring stage and submit. And then we can start adding our breakdown. So remember those contextual fields that we added? I think it was country, department, job level. We can come in here and we'll start adding those so we can slice and dice our process map. So we'll say by country, and maybe I'll add the department one. Department, we'll do job level. It's not all that difficult to add one more breakdown, right? Let's just come in here. And we'll add our job level. Hit submit. We're almost done. We'll just come here and go to the project definition. The last thing we have to do before we hit the mine button is import our process finding templates. So this is going to go, we click on that, it brings in that automated finding that we did, and we'll just hit generate the model. At this point, it's going to go out. It's going to harvest the relevant data from the audit logs that we need for mining. It's going to pass that off to the ML infrastructure, do the heavy duty number crunching, spit the stuff back in the model once it's finished. We open it up. We've got our summary and insights page. Obviously, we only configured that one finding, so it's going to look a little bit different, but there's our KPIs from the dashboard that we added. We've got our improvement opportunity categories, and then in the data set that we loaded up, it found 3 examples of rework, where things are going back to the sourcing step, things are going back to the interview step, and things are going back to the filled step. And here's the breakdown of it. Of course, we can jump over to the map for those, or we can just go to the map itself and start looking at the data that we just loaded up. And there we go. That's it. That's what it takes from an external data mining perspective. So very similar to everything that you've learned and that you're used to for analyzing processes that are running on the ServiceNow platform. But now we give you the ability to say, hey, if you can give us some data from that external system, an external process that's not native, you want to bring it in, you can do that as well. All right, let me just check and see. Let's go back to the slides. All right, I'm assuming that one of the questions that comes after you see that says, oh my gosh, okay, that's awesome. What do I do next? Well, you have to activate the plugin, right? So there's a plugin called Process Mining for External Data. It's available in the store. From an entitlement perspective, Process Mining for External Data is packaged with automation engines or flavors of automation engine. If you're interested and you want to learn a little bit more about kind of how the entitlement works and how to get your hands on it, I would just say reach out to your ServiceNow account team to get some additional details about this. And then I'll just pause there. Any sort of questions? If you got any questions, could you put them in the Q&A, and we'll do our best to answer as many as we possibly can. Oh, it looks like there have been some questions that have been loaded up, and my colleague Jeroen has joined, and he's answered some of them. So one of the questions was, are there mandatory columns which has to be in the data? And that's yes. The answer to that is yes. We covered that. That's those three core fields that we talked about earlier on in the event data section. You need to have that unique identifier field that could be a case ID, like I said, patient ID, or maybe a claim ID. So you have to have that unique identifier. You have to have that activity value. Like, what is the thing that's changing over time? In our case here with the hiring data, what we looked at was the state changes as things move through the hiring process. And then you need to have that timestamp field. When that activity changed. Those are the three core things that you need. And then, of course, those contextual fields that you want to use to slice and dice the data. Any other questions? Any other questions that people want to ask? Perfect. Quentin, I see your question here. So someone is mentioning, hey, the calendar invite dropped off. I am going to be updating the invite for these sessions, just so you know, because I scheduled it for the year. We're running out of the scheduled sessions. So I'll be updating, and I'll probably just resend out the calendar invite to everyone for these, so you have it back on your calendar. Let's see. Are there any other questions? Any other questions? I think we've answered most, so we'll just come here. For those that have not come before, and this is your first exposure to this, you might be saying to yourself, this is fantastic, Dan. Like, where do I learn more? Lots of different resources out there for you to learn a little bit more about process mining on the ServiceNow platform. One is there's an on-demand training course out there on the Now Learning site. It's still called Process Optimization Essentials. As of the Vancouver release, we renamed Process Optimization to Process Mining, and the course has not been updated as of yet. So just go out there, search for Process Optimization Essentials. We expect to have an updated course in Q1 of next year. There's a fantastic white paper. Just like everything else here at ServiceNow, we use the platform. We've been using process mining for over a year now on the ServiceNow platform. We've mined over 40 different processes. The Now on Now team has written a really great white paper in terms of how they've approached process mining here at ServiceNow and some of their initial findings using the solution. There's a community forum. That's probably where you found the link to this Academy session or to register. But if you're not, there's a process mining community forum page that you can go. That's where this recording will be posted. So if you go to the ServiceNow community or community.servicenow.com, search up process mining, it'll take you to the forum. You can search up Process Mining Academy. All the prior recordings are there. Like I said, this is our 19th one, so there's 18 sessions that you could watch. Which leads me to the next item here, Process Mining Academy. You find that on the forum. The other thing that customers are getting a lot of value out of is, for many of us, process mining is a new muscle. And we're not really sure, where to look and how to use it to identify and ask certain questions. So we started this use case series. Quick little 5-minute videos for common scenarios, like how to use process mining to do SLA breach analysis, how to use process mining to look at things. The most recent one we posted was how to use it to do on-hold reason analysis, or how to look for things that are taking longer to route than resolve, which is a feeding ground for self-service opportunities. So there's like 7 or 8 of these quick little recordings that are just helpful to, one, get you to start brainstorming about how you might want to apply the solution, but also show you how to do it. And then the last thing is, while we went through the basics of kind of how you would set up a project and import data from an external data perspective today, there is another session out there called Getting Started with ServiceNow's in-platform process mining that walks through all the basics, which is the core plugin that you need to turn on. Where do you get the content packs? What is an activity? What is a breakdown? How to create your first project? So that session's out there again on the community site or the Live On Now site, Getting Started with in-platform process mining. All right. Last chance for questions. Last chance for romance. Anybody have any additional questions that they want to get in? I'm going to just check. I know Jeroen has been answering some as we've been going through. Perfect. Somebody was just asking about where you would find it in the store. It looks like Jeroen has put the link in there, so that's good. Somebody is also asking about PDIs. Unfortunately, and for those that are not new, personal developer instances is a PDI. You have the ability to spin up one and play around with certain things. Unfortunately, those personal developer instances are not connected to the machine learning infrastructure, which is what we use to do the mining. It's how we keep process mining from having any performance impact on your operational instance by using that infrastructure. Those personal instances are not connected to a PDI. So your best bet is to try this out in a sub-production or development environment that you have access to. Unfortunately, we can't do it in PDIs. Someone was asking about cleaning the data prior to ingestion. And actually, I didn't cover that here today, but there are some options to remove and clean up some of the data as you go through it. We're also using Integration Hub. So Integration Hub can be useful in manipulating the data as you're loading it up. So there are some things that help you clean the data. It might be, that's actually a pretty good topic for a future session. So thanks for posting that one, but just know that there are options. I'm glad to see that someone just posted, not a question, but we've been getting asked for this. I'm glad to see that we've got this. You're not the only one, Drea, who's been asked for this. Like I said at the very beginning, there's two questions I usually get asked after introducing somebody to ServiceNow process mining is, how soon can I get my hands on this? And then the second question is, can I apply this to data beyond ServiceNow as well? So that's it. Question from an internal ServiceNow person. Yes, you can apply this. Process mining is available in your demonstration instances. So you do have the ability to kind of play around with this on your own in your demonstration instances. Anybody else have any additional questions? Anything that we haven't covered that you want to talk about today? This is great. We're getting a ton of questions in the chat. Awesome. I love seeing all the positive feedback. This is we're excited too. We're super excited. It's like I mentioned at the very beginning, it's been really fun for myself and the rest of the team, Jeroen, to be a part of kind of bringing process mining from a ServiceNow perspective to the ServiceNow community and just watching the reaction, the positive reaction. It's been great. All right, if there's no more questions, we'll just wrap up with, as I mentioned a couple of times here today, 2 more sessions this year from an academy perspective. The next one, we're quick turnaround time. In November is a little bit tough for me, and there's Thanksgiving and stuff like that. So next session is going to be the 3rd in 2 weeks from now, and we're going to do a deeper dive into those automated findings. We just quickly created one here today, but there's a couple of parameters per each of the finding that we'll want to dig into. So they're a really valuable part of the solution. We think they're going to be super helpful for Hook. So we wanted to do a session on that, get the recording out there. So that's coming. You should already have the invite. If you don't, I'm going to be updating the invites. And then in December, the plan right now, unless something changes and there's a topic that there's a lot of demand for, I've been asked many times now, hey, can I apply this to custom applications that we built on the ServiceNow platform with Creator Workflows? The answer is yes. The key piece is just to create the process configuration as we did here today, but we're going to spend a session on that for folks so they know how to do it and know how to apply it. All right, last chance for questions. Last chance for questions. Interesting. So just the question came in terms of customer category, in terms of, let's say, vertical or horizontal, that's been the biggest users of process mining so far. It's a mix. Obviously, we've seen a lot of interest in the finance community, though. So large banks, insurance organizations, we have a number of those that are using it. We see a lot of interest from an HR perspective, specifically in the global business service area or shared services areas. Those are areas that we're seeing a lot of interest. So it's a smattering across all the different industries, but I would say from my perspective, finance has been one of the more popular ones. All right, with that, thanks everyone for their time. I'll probably have the recording posted to the community site in a few hours. It's definitely by the end of the day, and I'll get it out there. Like I said, if now that you've seen this, you're aware of it, if you've got specific workflows or processes outside of ServiceNow that you're interested in applying this process mining to, we're really interested to hear from you what those are. So if you want to post them in the comment section of the community page that the recording's on, or most of you know how to find me. So feel free to reach out directly. I really want to learn more from you about where you think this would be useful. Thank you everyone for your time. See you in the next session.